Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. This is Tobiana, and I am today going to be doing a little chibi shading for the Iowa's base because I was bored and it sounded like fun. So let's get started on that. So I'm going to start off again by putting in a 30% fill of the base color on a multiply layer, and I'm going to go in with a brush and erase into that. And I'm starting off with kind of a softer brush that I'm going to use to kind of throw in some basic highlights into this. And I'm using some really big, broad brush strokes to just throw in just a starting point. And part of why I'm doing this is sometimes when you do a chibi sort of style shading, you end up with something that looks kind of flat, and I really wanted to avoid that in this template, and I really wanted to have fun with just the shapes that a chibi shading tends to create. And I will preface this by saying this is the first chibi shading I've done in probably it's been at least a year, probably closer to 2 or 3. I'm a little like, just gonna say that. So bear with me a little bit as I kind of work my way through this. Now, I started off by just playing with the highlight shapes, and I will say that I was creating some shapes that I didn't like as I was trying to warm myself up to this. And there was a little bit of trial and error at the beginning, but I did kind of speed that up more here. So you'll see me delete some stuff, but I think overall this ends up looking pretty cool, so bear with me. But basically I'm starting off by just putting in some big round shapes, and I'm erasing into that multiply layer still. So these aren't technically the highlights, but they kind of are. I'm creating these highlights by going into the shading. And we're going to go in and add some more shading here shortly. Now, I don't know if you guys caught it or not, but I did make a layer mask on this so that I could more easily erase and add into the shading and keep those lines looking super clean and sharp, because that's really important in a chibi shading, is not to have a lot of like messy brush work that normally kind of like in the more realistic designs, because it adds interest, but that's not what you want in these particular templates. So I'm using layer masks to just make things a little easier on myself, and then I'll go ahead and apply those later on. It's just another tool you can use to make things a little easier on yourself, so don't forget to do that. Now, I have sped up this video to about 5 times normal speed because first off, you do not want to watch the lag that my computer is currently, exhibiting at the moment. And second, otherwise this video would just be way too long and would have way too much time of me just sitting here throwing some music in the background. That's kind of boring music because that's what you can get for free, and I can't afford to like pay for music for this. Sorry guys. But by this point I've really kind of warmed up, and I'm at the point now where I'm just having a lot of fun throwing in these big shapes. Once upon a time I used to really love doing the chibi sort of shading on things, and I've kind of drifted away from it lately, but it was a lot of fun to go back and spend some time on a shading style that I haven't used in a while. But basically I'm just adding as much interest into this as I can. You want to use those bubbly shading shapes for chibi work, so I'm just throwing in some bubbles and some hot spots, and at this point I'm still just erasing into that shading layer. And right about here we're gonna go in with the same color on the base, and I'm making a new layer And I'm doing the layer mask again because that made things so much easier. I definitely recommend doing that. I'm going to go in with a brush into the mask itself, and you see I just applied that layer mask to the bottom layer. And I'm going into the mask, and I'm going to start brushing in some, just some quick shading into this to really make this start to pop. So that's what we're doing now. And as I'm adding these darker shadings in, I'm just going in and mostly just filling in color around the outside of where those bubbly shapes were and bringing that out to the edges, and you know, spending some time on that stupid forehead trying to figure out what to do there, because I hate foreheads and they're the bane of my existence. But ears are fun, so that's that was fun to do. And I'm going in and just adding a bunch of shading into the back and attempting something here that I'm not going to talk about because it didn't work. And but yeah, we're just finishing up that shading, and now we're gonna go in with a layer on the overlay after I, you know, applied that layer mask, and a light yellow because that's what I like to use for highlights. And we're gonna actually add the highlights now. You ready for that? Hope so, because it's already. Now, just like the shading layer, I'm going to go in with a super soft brush because I don't want to see any of the edges. And I'm going to add a little bit more roundness into this with those big broad brush strokes on the highlights. And I selected the shading layer and then erased that out of the highlights because I wanted some clean planes in there. And now I'm going to go in, and I really zoomed in because for me it's easier to first off get those clean lines that I want when I'm zoomed in, but also it's easier for me to focus just on the highlights and not get lost in the template, and I end up with a better result. Although I'm working on the shoulder and I really wasn't liking how that turned out, and I think it's because I had a few too many shapes in there. So I'm kind of fudging with that and zooming out and being like, that looks like not what I wanted to. So I'm going back in and I'm erasing some of the stuff that I had done, and I'm going to go in and simplify that a little bit, and I'm glad I did because I think it turned out looking way better after I did that. And it is kind of nice to erase those dots out of the highlights as well, so that you see that shape in the shading as well as the highlighting. Any kind of repetition you do in your artwork is going to be more appealing to the eye. And I'm kind of working on the eyes as well. And I actually like how the forehead turned out. Imagine that. Because I wasn't sure what to do on the eyes, and I'm fine with eyes on people, but on animals I have a harder time with it. I don't know why. But once I saw the finished result on a smaller scale, I actually really like how the eyes turned out, and that's great because these do end up on a smaller scale on Iowa's. But I'm really kind of adding in some darker shading into the eyes and some lighter highlights, trying to make those really pop. And I feel like that turned out pretty good. So I'm just adding some finishing touches to the template, and I'm selecting, when you see those little dotted ants, I'm selecting the shading layer, everything that's on the shading layer, and going back to the highlight layer and erasing that out, so that you keep this really distinct difference between shading and highlighting, and you want that on a chibi layer. So this is the finished result, looking all tiny. So let's see that a little bit on a larger scale. There we go. So I did it in blue, and then I also did it in the orange, which you're seeing here. And I'm going to upload this onto my Dropbox. If you want a free copy of this template for use on Iowa's, please hit subscribe to my channel and post with your ID in the comment section. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and you guys have a wonderful day, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video if you liked it.